Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Sides, and this course is Principles of Microeconomics, Chapter 5, Elasticity and its Application. In this segment of the lecture, we're going to talk about price elasticity and total revenue. And when we talk about this, basically what we're looking at is the relationship between price elasticity and total revenue. Or in other words, how does the total change in total revenue, change when there's movement along the curve? If you will remember from the previous lecture, we talked about when we look at a demand curve, and we can dissect the demand curve in a way that because of the slope of the line, of the curve, there are portions of the demand curve that is going to be elastic. It will have a high price elasticity of demand number, which means that if we change the price a little bit, the demand for that product will change dramatically. That means that the consumer is really, really sensitive to the price for that particular good at a certain level. Then there's another segment of the demand curve whereby the consumer is equally sensitive to price and demand, so that if you change it by $1, then you would expect 1 unit of demand a change. And then there's another segment of the demand curve that no matter what you do to the price, the demand for that product is pretty much the same, and you're not going to see much difference. And again, that goes back to that. You can go back to the previous lecture to get the specifics about that. But basically what we want to show in this lecture is when we move along the curve, when we move from the inelastic to the elastic or the elastic to the inelastic, what does that do for total revenue? And what we're going to find is it depends. And it depends for two reasons, and what we call them are two effects. One is what we call the price effect, and the other is what we call the the quantity effect. Now, briefly, let's look at this particular demand curve, and we're going to go back and use the scenario again from the previous lecture. You own a website design firm, and you're thinking about, if your start price is at $200, you're thinking about raising the price for your services to $250. If your services are currently selling at $250, you might be thinking about lowering the price to $200. And so if we move along the demand curve, changing our price from $200 to $250 or vice versa, what is that going to do to your total revenue? Because that's going to help you make up your mind whether or not you're going to change the price, which would cause movement on the curve. So in this particular example, we're going to say you're starting at $200 and you're trying to decide whether or not to raise your price to $250. And what you find is that at $200, you were selling 12 websites a month. So remember, total revenue is price times quantity. 200 times 12 is 2,400. And if we look at the change, we look at 250. If you change your price to 250, you're only going to sell 8 websites a month. 250 times 8 equals 2,000. So there's a lost revenue due to lower quantity, and this is what we call the quantity effect. This is called the quantity effect, because as the price goes up from 200 to 250, total revenue goes down. There's a decrease in quantity. That decrease in quantity is larger than the decrease in price. So as you can see, you have 4 units of websites, and then you have here $50 increase, will cause a decrease of 4 units. And so when we look at the total revenue, we see that the decrease in quantity is larger than the decrease in price. And this is what we call the quantity effect. Now, also, let me bring this to you. When we have the quantity in effect, basically what we're saying is that the demand is elastic. Okay, and we see this because the elastic demand is 1.8, which is greater than 1. And when demand is elastic, a price increase causes revenue to fall because, again, as the price increase, there's probably ample substitutes because of the competition. There could be any number of reasons why this would be the case. But what you need to remember is that when demand is elastic, then you would expect the quantity effect to go into effect. And that means that as you increase your price, your quantity, lost revenue due to quantity is lower. And so you're going to see a decrease in revenue. On the other side, we have here we have prices inelastic because the elasticity is less than 1. And what we'll find here is that at 200, we're selling 12 units. At 250, we're selling 10 units. Price times quantity, 200 times 12 is 2,400. Price times quantity, 250 times 10 is 2,500. And if you notice, the demand curve is steeper. So if we were doing a complete demand curve, at this portion of the demand curve, it's a little bit steeper. The slope is steeper. That means that it is more inelastic, and that is confirmed again because we have an elasticity of less than 1. And when the demand is inelastic, then what we will find is that a change in price will increase revenue. And the reason why we have that is because the decrease in quantity is smaller. The decrease in quantity is smaller than the decrease in price, or the increase in price, and so total revenue would go up. And again, this is called the price effect, and that is a fall in quantity is smaller than a fall in price. And if you need to look for additional information, let me refer you to figure 4 in the chapter. If you are in the small book, it is on page 96. If you're in the combo book, it's further back. But figure 4 in chapter 5 will give you even more, in the textbook will give you even more information concerning this relationship of price effect, quantity effect relative to price elasticity and total revenue. This concludes this portion of the lecture. I look forward to speaking to you soon. Have a good one.